like hurting conservatives. Okay. Hi everybody, and welcome. I'm Marnie Hockenberg, and I really appreciate you all coming out tonight to honor our friend, dear friend, Phil Haney. First, I would like to thank Chris Bonvino for hosting us. Chris, where are you? Thank you. Thank you so much. For those of you who were here at the chili cook-off about a year ago, do you remember?
Oh yeah.
Phil was here. Phil Haney was here with Chris Gobbett, so it's only fitting that, that we have it here. So thank you so much. To start off, we would like to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Doesn't that feel good to say? Really? I'd also like to thank David Sanchez. Thank you, David, for being my right-hand person. David put a lot of time and effort in helping me get this organized, so thank you so very much. At this point, David is going to lead us in a prayer on behalf of Phil Haney.
I'm going to just say something real quick. I got to back off here, I suppose. I've met Phil and got to know him pretty well, and I picked out a couple verses that I thought would be good to read about him, because this guy, for those who knew Phil, will know what I'm talking about on him. First verse is going to be Hebrews 13:2. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. This man was an angel, and from spending time with him, I was grateful to even get to know him. A lot of people here have come over to our house. Also, the other verse is Matthew 25:21, and this also fits Phil. His master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." And I know Phil's up in heaven right now with his wife and really enjoying his presence and stuff like that. And I'm just going to, if we just bow our heads and just pray. Not very good at it, but Heavenly Father, we just want to lift this time up to you. And we want to honor Phil. He's a great patriot. And I'm blessed to know him, and I'm sure many people here are just feeling blessed. And we have a feeling of loss and hurt, for we hurt because we have loved this man. And I just want to just lift this time up and be with everybody here. In your heavenly name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, David. Friends, we are here today to honor and tribute and grieve together, pay tribute to an amazing American patriot, our friend, Phil Haney. The last time many of you saw Phil was probably right here in this room, as I mentioned. And Phil was the kind of person that when you were his friend forever. And Phil had many friends who loved him. He dedicated his life to preserving America's liberty and freedom and saving our constitutional republic from the tyranny of the Marxist Islamic counter-state movement. Phil was a famed Obama administration DHS whistleblower, a man of unparalleled personal character, a devout Christian, and a friend to almost all of us here today. You might remember a little background about Phil. He testified to Congress in 2016 that the DHS, under then President Barack Hussein Obama, had instructed him to delete the files of hundreds of individuals linked to Islamic jihadi groups. The information that Phil uncovered could have potentially prevented the jihadi attacks in San Bernardino, California, and the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. For his bravery and courage, Phil was skewered. He subsequently wrote the book, See Something, Say Nothing, where he exposed Obama's administration abetting the Muslim Brotherhood by purging their DHS intelligence records. What a brave man. Early last Friday night, I got a call from a mutual friend. She simply said, "Marnie, Phil is dead. He has been shot and killed." I didn't want to believe it, as I'm sure many of you didn't when you heard the news. But yet, I knew as well as you did, that Phil's life was always in danger, because Phil was a truth teller. He was a watchman, and I think he was a gift from God to freedom people, loving people like us. According to the Amador County Sheriff's Office, Phil was found shot to death at a park and ride about 3 miles from his home. A firearm was allegedly found near his body. The preliminary report indicated that it was self-inflicted and that it was a suicide. Since then, the department has walked that back. Friends, those of us who knew Phil Haney did not believe that he would take his own life. He told many friends that he would never, ever commit suicide. Whistleblowers don't take their own lives, especially when they have not completed their mission. Personally, like many of you, I believe that Phil was murdered. I pray, and we pray, that we find out who caused his death. Phil was very happy. He was engaged to be married in April. He was going to release a new book entitled National Security Meltdown, which was to implicate many people that need to be implicated, as we all know. Phil called me a week prior to his death. He called me on the preceding Friday. We had a great conversation about a lot of things, and he was very happy. He had a lot of things to look forward to. The last time I saw Phil was in December. He was really starting a new chapter in his life. He was so happy. He had a lot to look forward to. Tonight, I don't want to dwell on Phil's death. I want to focus instead on his life and the blessings that he gave to all of us in Minnesota. So I organized this impromptu get-together so that we could pay tribute together as a community and grieve and mourn the loss of a true friend and a patriot. He sacrificed so much of his life to us here in Minnesota. I felt like putting this together was really the least that we could do to repay all that Phil Haney has given to us. And we want to pray for his friends, his family, and his fiancée, Denise. How many of you knew Phil personally? Just a show of hands? That's a lot. That's great. Once you met Phil, he was a friend for life and a true friend, and your life was going to be blessed forever, and we have been blessed. Phil was a gentle giant, a patriot, a gentleman, a man of honesty and deep personal conviction. He was a devout Christian and a man of God. Phil had an unassuming demeanor, which made him really good at his craft. When Phil talked to you, he was focused on you and you alone. Nobody else really mattered. He wasn't looking around the room to talk to somebody more important. He was keying in on you, and he remembered everything about you, because Phil was that kind of a person. His intelligence was off the chart, a genius. He shared his many talents with all of us, and they were so many. He was a Renaissance man, poetry and songwriting and philosophy and writing, and he was artistic and brilliant. I don't think any of us have ever met a man quite like Phil Haney. And of course, our lives are so much better just by knowing Phil. I met Phil at a book signing a few years ago, but I really got to know him and developed a deep friendship with him when he came to our Understanding the Threat, Train the Trainer program. And he came to talk to us about the Muslim Brotherhood. Of course, he was an expert on that subject. When the training was over, I took Phil, Chris Gobbets, and Laura Loomer to a local blues dive bar. Shocker, I know. I introduced Phil to the band. Before we knew it, we looked up, and there was Phil sitting in with the band singing Mustang Sally. And everybody's like, oh my God, there's Phil Haney. He was having the best time because there was truly a great fun side to Phil, and we had a chance to get to see that. Phil would call me kiddo, and I understand that some other people here he would call kiddo as well. Cindy Pugh, right? Other people? Yeah, he just had a great knack about him. And then he would send me texts with cartoons or pictures of the sunset or plants that he was growing or other beautiful things. He was just that kind of a person. He had a nickname for Michelle Even and I. He called us the Hot Shots. Hey, Hot Shot. He'd send us texts. Hey, Hot Shots. How you doing? Great job. He called us the Hot Shots because when we would score a victory with our activism against and scored a victory against the jihadis and Marxists here, we would celebrate with a shot of Fireball. So hence the Hot Shots. He was proud of our protests, Michelle, against the Somali daycare fraud, confronting Keith Ellison and Ilhan Omar a number of times with Laura Loomer. We saved the pledge in St. Louis Park, and he was really proud of our work with MAGA Soda, and he encouraged us to continue with that because he had confidence that working together we could and will turn Minnesota for President Trump. Phil always took time to help me if I were to have a media interview, even though he was really busy. And he was a busy man, but he always took time for his friends. You never felt rushed on the phone when you were with Phil. Many of you got to know Phil as he spent a lot of time away from his beloved wife, Francesca. And he was here for a number of months while she was dying of cancer back home. But she encouraged him to come here and fight for us and fight for the life of Minnesota. Before she passed away, he and Francesca were with us on election night down at the hotel in Bloomington, the GOP election night, the watch party, witnessing Minnesota fall, literally, to the Marxist Islamic counter-state with the election of Keith Ellison and Ilhan Omar. I can only imagine how devastated Phil must have felt at that time. I know we all felt devastated, but imagine what was going through Phil Haney's mind. Phil spent months here in Minnesota in 2018 organizing the Minutemen to expose Keith Ellison, his Marxist jihadi agenda, and his domestic abuse, among many other nefarious affiliations. I kept many of his Minutemen emails, because I do that. I just keep emails. And I was going through the emails today, and I found one with his itinerary. He would update us where he was going to be. Oh my gosh, you guys, when I looked at this itinerary, I got tired. But Phil was tireless. Literally, let me just show you, and I'll pass it around. Starting in September, he had Act for America, travel, he was on a radio show, he was in St. Cloud, then he went to the Gateway Eagle Council, and then he had a media team work day, then he was with Usama Dakdok down in Zumbro Falls. He was up in St. Cloud, he went to Kansas City, he had a work day. He went to Experience Christchurch. He had lunch with Laura Loomer, who was here during that time. He had various meetings, videos, and that's just September. He had a work day, went to Rochester. Probably many of you saw him down at the Rochester, at the Trump rally. How many of you were there, just out of curiosity, with Phil? I bet you have some stories to share, and I hope you do that when we're done right now, today. I won't go through the entire itinerary, but believe me, every single day, Phil Haney was driving around in his RV called the Whale. Do you remember? How many of you have been in the Whale? I have. It's quite the experience. we organized a speaking engagement for Phil at a local business where he talked about the big fish and the little fish. We're going to play a clip for you from that event that was up at a business in Plymouth. I think many of you were there. Is that right? You were. So David, do you want to ramp that up?
Yeah, got it.
Yep. And in this clip, Phil explains that our role in this war is being the little fish, because we could swim adeptly through the seaweeds. But if we got together as a school of fish, we could accomplish great things, and we could swim with the big fish. We're going to ramp that up here shortly.
Sounds like the government, doesn't it?
You can't even plan that.
Our sovereignty and the Constitution versus the threat we face. I noticed traveling around that the missing word in our political discussion, in our vocabulary, is the concept of sovereignty. And I'll hopefully explain that a little bit more. By the way, everybody here is now a member of the Plymouth Patriots. Have you heard about the Minnesota Minutemen? It's an ad hoc group. Some of you are on the mailing list. Anybody here that wants to be on it, just let me know. It's the little fish. I call us the little fish. What about the little fish? Well, in every pond there's little fish and there's big fish, right? You'd agree with that, since you're fishermen up here in Minnesota? Well, the little fish don't always know what to do they? They're sort of scared of the big fish too. In fact, they're not sure the big fish might not eat them. But the actual weight of all the little fish in the pond is actually bigger than all the big fish. And there's one other big advantage too, and that is the little fish can go places where the big fish can't. But I've also been adopted by the big fish, meaning the super PAC here in Minnesota. And so now we've created a portal where the little fish can swim around with the big fish. And it's making a difference, isn't it? Wardlow's ahead by
Point.
7.
I would like to introduce you to a big fish. Dick Angelek, would you like to come up and say a few words? He's a big fish, a friend of Phil. Angelshek, right?
Angelshek.
Thank you so much for sharing a few words with us about your experience with Phil.
Marty, could you hold the microphone out? You guys are like back in the corner and we can't see you.
Lovely fish.
I've been called big something, but not big fish. That's what you get when you're involved with this. Thank you so much, Marty. It's a real privilege. I'm very humbled to be here tonight to talk about Phil, and thank you, David, for everything you've done, and Chris Bonvino for making the facilities possible. All great American patriots, as are all of you. This is a tough one because I got to know Phil very well. David called me one day. I don't know if it was David or Chris or maybe both. It had to be David because, well, yeah, because Chris doesn't answer his phone or call back usually. Anyway, he said, you know, you got to come over. I've been talking to Chris. And he said, I'd like you to meet Laura Loomer and Phil Haney. And he said, why don't we get together at a restaurant over in Edina? So Cindy, my wife, and I went over and met with David and Laura. And that was on the 30th of September in 2018. And that was the first time we met Phil and we met Laura. And there was something special about these people. These were great American patriots. And Laura and Phil were a combination that was hard to figure out because Laura was, I mean, she was like a badger. I think she'd chew your leg off. And Phil was deep. And he ran low, and we began to talk, and we started to learn, you know, the first question kind of is, you know, where are you from? Well, I'm from California. Went to, you know, University of California, I think it was Davis, the ag school, and he studied agriculture. And he went into the fact he was a scientist. And I said, well, you're a scientist. How did you end up at the Department of Homeland Security as the founder? Well, I kind of ended up doing some work over in the Middle East, and then I went to school over there. I learned how to speak Farsi. I learned, you know, we're going through all this stuff, doesn't add up. So later on down the road, we had a lot deeper conversations, and I can tell you from my experience in conversations with Phil that he wasn't farming in the Middle East. He was doing some other work for all of us, patriotic work, and work he didn't talk about. Phil was a very, very humble man who loved his family, and Francisca's. She, a lot of people didn't know she was a minister, and Cindy and I got the opportunity to spend time with them when she was, getting towards the end, and they talked about Sarah, her daughter, who they had a lot of love for. But I think today, if Phil had something he would want us to do today, would be not to feel sorry for him, but to celebrate America, the fact that he was a patriot, what makes this country great, what each and every person, every one of the people, and the persons who got to know, the people who got to know Phil, what it was like to be a patriot, and what lengths we go to protect our country and make this country great. And Phil was a great American patriot who literally gave his life for this country. I was going over my desk today. I was going to make some notes up, and I'm shuffling through my papers. And on February 10th, that's what, a little over 2 weeks ago, that's the last time I talked to Phil. After getting together with him and spending time, he started to expound on a lot of the different things that were happening in the state of Minnesota. We had done work on somewhat on the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE, and did some research, but Phil had everything down. We'd go someplace and he'd say, you see that guy over there? You see this guy? This is who this guy is. This is how he got here. This is what he came here. This is what he's doing. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Marnie and Chris, and David. I mean, this guy had a laser beam on him. And you'd sit back and you'd just say, okay, what are we going to do? And the unfortunate thing was, we did lose this round with the Omar vote and with the Ellison vote. And we fought really hard. And when he mentioned he teamed up with a super PAC, he gave us information that we couldn't get anyplace else. And we used it the best we could. And even the Ellison race, if we wouldn't have had a record turnout for Walz, Ellison would not be our Attorney General today. Plus, there were some votes, and I know there's people in this room, that there were some votes that I think were counted more than once, or maybe, let me see. Cindy and I went to the poll, and they said, are you Alice Andolchak? I said, do I look like Alice Andolchak? Well, if you're you got the Democrat poll people there, so they might have thought I changed my gender. I don't know. But trust me, I haven't. Yeah, right. Anyway, they said, well, where is Alice? I said, she passed away 5 years ago. But she said, yeah, but she lives at your address. Is she coming in to vote later? I said, no. She's been passed away 5 years ago. Well, isn't she going to come? Do you want to vote for her? I said, she's dead. Okay, this was at our voting, this is in Minneapolis. And it just, you guys have all heard the stories, and I've actually seen it happen. So anyway, I think the best thing I can really say about Phil Haney, he loved his family, he loved his country. He became our friend, our family friend. And he was a friend first, and the information that he possessed was unbelievable. And Phil told me twice on 2 occasions, he just said, Dick, I want you to know, if anything happens to me, and he said it very well could, he said, I want you to know that I did not commit suicide. Wow. And we talked about it when we got the information, when we found out. And I don't remember if David sent me the coroner, or was it the coroner's report?
I called you, and then I think you got it before I did.
I got it from someplace. It just came in. Who knows? You don't want to know where it came from. Anyway, it said that he committed suicide, and then shortly thereafter they said they were investigating a murder. And all I could think of is, wow. Wow. So I think what Phil wants us to do is to continue to carry the fight, not surrender and not back down. This is a war for our country. This is a war for our children, for our grandchildren, for our very being of who we are. And Phil gave his life for us to keep this going. So I think the biggest tribute that we can pay to Phil Haney is to continue to fight, keep showing up, and I'd just like to say, may God rest his soul and comfort his family in this troubled time. And I know his daughter Sarah's probably not doing real well, and his fiance. So this is a tough situation, so bless his family, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dick. Well, you just read the last paragraph here, so that's great that I written out, because Phil would want us to continue the mission in his honor. We cannot stop here, friends. Literally, we have to fight for the future, for our children and our grandchildren, so they are not living under tyranny. And that is the bottom line. And that is what Phil Haney would want us to do. So let's make a promise to ourselves. Let's make a promise to our children and our grandchildren and to America that we will fight in Phil's honor and his memory. May God rest his soul. Friends, I want to thank you all for coming out here tonight. We have an amazing community, and when we work together, we will achieve great things for Phil and for America. I'm looking around the room and I am seeing wonderful patriots with so much potential. Please, let's not back down. We're really at the 0 hour. Phil knew it, and he gave his life for that. Now, after the program, I thank you for bringing your potluck. I so appreciate it. Please help yourself. We are going to, I've called Champs in near Ridgedale in Minnetonka, because we have a private room. All of us, some of us may want to go there and socialize. That's another very special place, because that's where we took Phil after one of the events. And Phil was there enjoying a beer and his favorite curly fries. And he would go around and talk to everybody. Phil would want us to do that. So afterwards, feel free, come out to Champs and join us. So to conclude, where's Kevin Murphy? We have,
I can, here.
a tribute here. Or,
There he is.
Kevin, hey, would you like to wrap this up?
Oh, well. Hi, I don't know if many of you know me. My name's Kevin Murphy. I've met Phil a couple of times. I'm the tip of the spear. I can't stand any of this shit going on. And I'm all for finding out who we need to get rid of, how to get rid of them, and anybody needs something done, just give me a call. But we have to be strong. We have to force these people. We have to force them to listen to us, because you can't be nice to these people anymore. You can't be civil. Huh? Oh, I don't. Yeah. And as I am a veteran, as Phil was a member of the United States service, we have taps getting lined up, and when, if you would please, once David has it, please stand at attention and give the respect of a military and government remembrance to Phil Haney with taps. It's coming, you gotta prep it. a warrior's send-off.
Thank you all so very much for coming tonight.